The runway glistened under the morning sun as Flight 847 prepared for takeoff. Final boarding, cargo sealed. Everything was on schedule. Until Rex broke free. The K9 dog lunged toward the aircraft with a force no handler could stop, his bark cutting through the airport's usual hum like a crack of thunder. At first, no one understood. 15 minutes later, they would never forget. Before we dive into this true, breathtaking story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and follow us for more real-life heroes. Because sometimes, a dog doesn't just chase danger. He unmasks it. The sunlit tarmac of Dallas International buzzed with the usual, orderly chaos of departures. Jets rolled steadily across the lanes. Ground crews zipped by on carts, and speakers droned gate announcements to inattentive ears. Flight 772 to Munich had begun final boarding. The air was dry, hot, shimmering faintly in the midday heat, and on the outer rim of Gate D14, Sergeant Jamie Lorne adjusted the grip on his K9's leash. Rex, a German shepherd trained in both narcotics and trauma scent detection, stood tall beside her, eyes focused, tail still. There was nothing unusual about this day. Nothing. Jamie ran through the checklist again, her thoughts split between the routine security sweep and the growing desire for a break. 14-hour shifts were beginning to blur together, and her partner Rex had been unusually tense all morning. "You're jumpy," she muttered under her breath, offering him a quiet pat between the ears. His muscles, coiled beneath layers of trained discipline, didn't relax. Instead, his ears twitched and he inhaled sharply. Then again. Then, with no warning, Rex lurched forward. The leash burned through Jamie's hand before she had time to tighten it. "Rex," she shouted, stumbling forward, almost losing her balance as the dog took off like a bolt. But this wasn't chaos, it was directed. Intentional. Rex wasn't running wild, he was hunting. His gait was low, calculated. His eyes locked onto a target ahead. The tail end of Flight 772, where the final cargo was being loaded. Gasps rose from nearby crew members. Someone yelled, "Loose K9!" A gate marshal reached for his radio. Jamie sprinted after him, flashing her badge, her throat dry. Her partner had never disobeyed a command in their 4 years together. And yet here he was, charging headlong toward a commercial airliner. Every step laced with something she couldn't place. Urgency. The cargo handler near the ramp froze as Rex growled, circling a stack of untagged luggage, before lunging and barking fiercely at a pink suitcase near the top of a conveyor. Jamie arrived seconds later, heart pounding, sweat tracing her spine. "Stand down, Rex," she ordered, but the dog didn't even flinch. His hackles were raised, body rigid. Then he did something she'd never seen him do before. He pressed his snout to the bag, sniffed once, and let out a deep, bone-shaking howl. That sound stopped everything. The conveyor ground to a halt. The flight deck called for a cargo freeze. Within minutes, the captain himself, alerted to a security incident by tower control, halted the taxi. Passengers already seated craned their necks to look through the small oval windows. Phones began recording. On the tarmac, Jamie knelt beside Rex, one hand hovering near his collar, the other brushing her weapon instinctively. "What are you picking up?" she whispered, looking into his eyes. He didn't respond with excitement or fear, but something different, an intense, focused sorrow. Airport security flooded the scene. A supervisor appeared, flanked by 2 TSA officers and a German shepherd handler from another unit. "What the hell's going on?" he barked. Jamie stood up. "My dog just signaled. Something in that luggage." "Drugs?" "No," Jamie said. "It's something else." Her voice carried a tremble she tried to hide. Rex started digging, not in a frenzy but with slow, deliberate scrapes of his paw. The suitcase tumbled off the stack with a thud, revealing something odd underneath the conveyor ramp. An access panel, slightly ajar, with fresh scratch marks on the inside lip. The handler beside Jamie blinked. Technicians were called. Tools rattled. As screws were turned and the panel opened wider, a rank, warm smell filled the air. Sweat, stale breath, something human. Everyone stepped back from the makeshift crawl space beneath the luggage bay. A weak cough sounded. Barely audible, but enough. 15 minutes had passed since he broke free, and now, trembling and bruised, a young girl no older than 6, was gently lifted out of the cramped compartment by a stunned EMT. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply blinked into the sunlight, a single tear trailing down her dusty cheek as her gaze locked onto the German Shepherd. Her hand instinctively reached out. Rex inched closer and touched her fingers with his nose. The tension hadn't yet settled when the little girl was lifted from the narrow compartment, her limbs limp but intact, her silence almost more disturbing than if she had screamed. She clutched a small stuffed bear, its fabric torn and one eye missing, as if that threadbare toy were the last remnant of a world she once trusted. Paramedics quickly swaddled her in a thermal blanket, murmuring soft reassurances. But the girl didn't. Her gaze remained fixed, unshaken on Rex. Jamie crouched beside him, feeling his body still bristling with alertness. "You're not done, are you?" she whispered. He didn't move. Then, almost imperceptibly, Rex tilted his head to the right, toward the stack of remaining luggage. Security had begun to clear the area, drawing curious passengers and press behind a makeshift barricade of rolling gates. A local TSA supervisor barked orders into his radio, trying to balance protocol with damage control. But amid the noise and the gathering crowd, Rex moved again, not toward the child this time, but back to the conveyor system where the first pink suitcase had fallen. Jamie followed instinctively, ignoring the questioning looks. Rex's nose traced along the base of the conveyor, then darted up to sniff a second suitcase, pink again, but this one slightly darker with a purple butterfly decal near the zipper. His ears flicked, and he let out a low, grating growl. "This one?" Jamie asked aloud, already reaching for the tag. The luggage was registered to a foreign national. No local address, no phone number, no emergency contact. As Jamie unzipped the suitcase slowly, 2 officers watched with gloved hands at the ready. But when the lid flipped open, they found his claws scraped the plastic matting, then hit something harder. Hollow, artificial. Jamie leaned in, knocking the suitcase aside, brushing her hand across the cargo hold's base. Her fingers struck a strange seam. "Wait," she murmured. "This shouldn't be here." The technician on site, a man named Ortiz, overheard and joined them. "Cargo bay panels are sealed and flush. There shouldn't be gaps unless someone—" He trailed off as he crouched beside her. With a small flashlight, he shone light across the seam. Then he tapped it with a wrench. The hollow echo was clear. "Someone built a false bottom," he said grimly. With permission from TSA, he retrieved a power driver and began removing the panel screws. The moment the last one popped free, a thin wooden plate gave way, exposing a narrow cavity beneath the floor. The stench hit first. Sweat, old food, mildew. The air was warm, trapped, and heavy with fear. Ortiz gagged, pulled back, but Jamie stayed frozen in place, staring at the impossible architecture of the hideout. It was barely 2 feet high, lined with a thin layer of worn padding and a shredded airline blanket. In one corner, a juice box, half crushed. Beside it, a crumpled photograph. 2 figures, blurry, holding hands on a beach. Jamie reached in slowly. Her fingers brushed something soft, a shoe, then a small bracelet. It read "Lena" in faded letters. And then came a sound, a fragile whisper. Not words, not a cry, but the inhale of a tiny chest. Her voice cracked. "There's someone else down here." Ortiz jolted upright. Wait, what? He grabbed a second flashlight, shining it into the cavity as Jamie reached farther in. Her hand wrapped gently around his small wrist, thin, warm, trembling. "Alive," she whispered. "She's alive, a second child." No one said a word as the girl was carefully lifted out, slightly older than the first, her lips cracked, her dress torn, her arms bruised. She clung to Jamie instinctively, not even looking around. As medics rushed in again, the crowd behind the barricade broke into murmurs, a wave of disbelief swelling outward. 2 children, both hidden in the underbelly of an international flight, both nearly smuggled through a routine departure. And the only one who had known, who had insisted, was a dog. Rex sat back, still watching, his eyes now darting toward the baggage track itself. The panel had only covered one side of the cargo space. Jamie turned. "Ortiz, what's under the other side?" The technician hesitated. "There's no record of modification, but if someone got one panel in, they could have duplicated the structure for balance." You don't want to put too much uneven weight under a floorboard, especially on a transatlantic flight. She nodded. Open it. Ortiz grabbed his tools again, and within 5 minutes, the second side revealed another hollow compartment. This one was empty, but not untouched. Fingernail scratches lined the inside walls, small, frantic scrapes, and a deep indentation like a child had been curled up there for hours if not days. Jamie's stomach turned. Or more. Rex barked sharply, not a warning but a call. Jamie turned. He wasn't looking at the compartments anymore. He was sniffing the pink suitcase, the first one, the one that had seemed ordinary. She moved toward it, unzipping its inner lining. At the bottom, under a flap of faux silk, was a stitched pocket, sealed shut with industrial thread. Jamie grabbed a penknife and sliced it open. Something small and metallic fell into her palm. A US plane. Unmarked, warm as if recently handled. She stared at it, heart pounding. Someone wanted this on board, she said, but it wasn't meant to be found. Ortiz was already backing away, reaching for his radio. This just became a federal case. But even as authorities arrived and evidence was bagged, Jamie remained next to Rex, staring at the second child now curled on a stretcher, clutching her. The picture wasn't random. It was taken in a place Jamie recognized, Crescent Beach, North Carolina, where an Interpol file once marked the last known sighting of the second girl, though breathing, was barely conscious when the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher. Her skin was sallow, her limbs thin like twigs, and her lips moved with dry, silent whispers that no one could understand. She gripped the photograph so tightly that Jamie had to gently peel her fingers back to keep it from crumpling into dust. The moment they placed her inside the emergency van, the child curled on her side like she'd been trained to shrink into silence. Not a name, not a scream, just silence. Jamie rode with her to the medical checkpoint set up within the airport security wing, Rex seated beside her, his eyes never leaving the girl. Every breath she took seemed like a battle. "Do we have any ID on her?" Jamie asked one of the responding TSA agents, who shook his head. "No tags, no documents. She's not listed on any family unit." Jamie frowned. "Nobody that age travels alone." "Except she wasn't alone," the agent added grimly. "There was that first girl." Jamie glanced at the corridor where the younger girl was being stabilized. She was alert now, seated with a juice box, still clutching the worn teddy bear, eyes darting between adults she didn't trust. Her name was a mystery too. They hadn't gotten a word from her, not even a nod, just that same unwavering stare toward Rex. "You're cross-checking facial recognition," the agent continued. "Interpol missing persons Amber Alerts." "So far, nothing matches," Jamie muttered. "It's like they don't exist." That thought unsettled her. Children didn't just appear in international cargo bays, tucked between false panels, unless someone had deliberately erased their identity. Deliberately made sure no one would look for them, but someone had known they were there. Someone had designed those compartments. Someone had planned it down to the inch. Later that evening, a forensic tech approached Jamie outside the holding area, holding up a tablet. "You asked for security footage near the cargo loading zone at the time those bags were processed?" Jamie nodded. The tech pulled up a grainy feed, time-stamped 3 hours from a ceiling cam, near Checkpoint C's staff gate. Jamie leaned in. The video showed a woman walking briskly with a carry-on and a pink suitcase. Dark pink, butterfly decal, identical to the one Rex had flagged. She wore a flight attendant's uniform, navy blue blazer, scarf, professional bun, badge on the collar. But something was off. "Zoom in on the badge," Jamie said. The tech did. The ID was blurry, but the logo looked wrong, slightly distorted. The font wasn't standard. Jamie's heart thudded. "That's not a Delta uniform," she whispered. The woman moved confidently, not sneaky, not hurried. She rolled the bag to the oversized baggage check desk, exchanged words with the clerk, handed over the suitcase, and never returned. She didn't board any flight. She never went through security screening. In fact, 15 minutes after leaving the luggage at the desk, she exited the terminal through a service door and disappeared. Jamie stared at the screen. She just walked in, dropped off a suitcase with a child hidden inside, and walked out? "Yeah," the tech said. "No fingerprints either." She wore gloves. Jamie rubbed her temple. "Where's the check-in clerk now?" "In the conference room with Homeland agents." Shaken up, says the woman had the proper digital credentials and badge barcode scanned fine. Which means, someone spoofed the airline's security system, Jamie said. You've got a breach. The tech hesitated, then added, there's something else. He switched to a second video, this time from the access ramp to the tarmac. This was about 2 hours before the flight. Same woman, but this time, she wasn't alone. On screen, the fake flight attendant now held the hand of a small girl, 6, maybe 7, with messy dark hair, wearing a lavender dress and Velcro sandals. The child clung to a stuffed rabbit, eyes wide and darting, but compliant. The woman smiled, knelt beside her, then passed her off to a baggage worker, off record, with a wink. The man took the girl, lifted her like luggage, and disappeared behind a row of containers. Jamie's stomach twisted. We've got airport personnel involved, the tech confirmed. Already under internal review. His shift ended 10 minutes after that handoff. Didn't clock out. We think he ditched his uniform and escaped out the long-term parking exit. We found his badge tossed in a trash can. This was coordinated, Jamie said. Planned down to the second. The tablet vibrated in the tech's hand. A notification from facial recognition. He opened it, eyes widening. We got a partial match. He showed the alert. The older girl pulled from the second compartment had a 63% match to a missing child report from 3 years ago. Name? Elisa Marin. Reported missing in Puerto Rico during a custody dispute. Father, deceased. Mother, last known address, undisclosed. The case had been closed due to lack of evidence. Elisa had vanished. Jamie stared at the photo. Same almond-shaped eyes. Same scar on the left cheek, same hairline. It was her. 3 years later. In a hidden compartment of an outbound flight. So someone's been moving her for years, Jamie whispered. And if they faked the uniforms and rigged baggage entries, this isn't just trafficking. This is infrastructure level. The air grew colder. Jamie felt it in her spine. This wasn't a one-time smuggling job. This was a supply chain. Behind her, Rex sat with perfect stillness, but his ears were tilted, listening. His eyes were still locked on the hallway where the girls were resting. Jamie looked down at the USB drive she had slipped into her jacket earlier. It hadn't yet been examined. She opened her phone, turned on a secure file scan, and inserted the drive via adapter. It loaded instantly, dozens of folders, each labeled with a date, each with image files, videos, scanned passports, medical records, and she was led down a corridor by 2 masked figures. The last clip was labeled. Jamie's vision blurred slightly as she backed out of the file structure. Then she found a hidden folder titled Consequential Better Cargo. Password protected. She tapped the attempt key. The drive asked for biometric input. Encrypted at black market level, the text said, peeking over her shoulder. That's military-grade stuff. No way some local traffickers could afford this. Jamie felt bile rise in her throat. Unless they're not just traffickers. She stood slowly. They're moving children like cargo. And they're using airport systems to do it. The tech nodded. And if they've done it here, they've done it elsewhere. Jamie looked over her shoulder, where Rex had now moved closer to the exit, his body stiff again. Watching, waiting, she felt the weight of the USB in her hand and whispered, "There's more. We're just scratching the surface." The moment Jamie stepped into the makeshift medical suite again, she was met with a quiet shift in energy. The younger girl, now hydrated and slightly more alert, sat cross-legged on the exam table, absently clutching her stuffed bear while drawing with a crayon one of the nurses had offered her. No words yet, but her hands were finally moving, fingers working with that familiar urgency only children possess when their minds remember more than their mouths can express. Jamie crouched next to her, careful not to crowd her space. "Hey sweetheart, what are you drawing?" she asked softly, but the girl didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. Her fingers made tight loops and jagged angles on the corner of a medical notepad, then stopped. She glanced at Jamie with a flash of something, fear, maybe recognition, then tucked the paper under her leg. Jamie didn't press, simply held out her hand, and after a few seconds, the girl handed her the paper with hesitant fingers. Jamie unfolded it slowly. It was a drawing, crude and unsteady, but unmistakably deliberate. 3 figures stood in front of a house, a woman with long black hair, a dog with pointed ears, and a little girl in a purple dress. The woman had her hand resting protectively on the girl's shoulder. The house behind them was squat, rectangular, drawn with shaky lines, but what caught Jamie's breath was what had been scrawled above the door. A black snake coiled like a figure eight, its tongue flicking forward. The snake wasn't accidental. It was shaped darker than anything else on the page. A symbol. Intentional. Jamie stared at the image, heart starting to thud harder. She'd seen that symbol before, years ago. Not just anywhere, but in a declassified dossier during her time assisting Homeland Security on human trafficking cases. The Black Coil, that's what they had called it in whispers, a transnational trafficking network so tightly controlled, so brutal in operation that every victim was marked in some way by that insignia. They had been shut down in a dramatic sting operation 6 years ago, leaders captured in Prague, warehouses raided in Bulgaria and Mexico. Or at least, that's what the world had believed. But this child's drawing, this symbol, it didn't feel like history. It felt like proof of resurrection. Jamie took the sketch straight to Commander Harris, a veteran officer overseeing the federal task force that had just been activated due to the case. The two stood in a secured conference room, walls lined with active evidence boards. Harris took one look at the paper and immediately stepped back. "Jesus," he whispered. "Is that?" Jamie nodded. "The Black Coil." Harris leaned on the edge of the table, visibly shaken. "I thought they were dismantled. I sat in the briefing myself when Interpol confirmed their operations were." "You're right." Not the sketch beside a photo from the USB she had decrypted earlier. One showing a similar house, satellite shot, with the same snake symbol burned into the metal gate outside. "It's not compromised," Jamie said. "It's rebranded. Quiet. Smarter. They're moving again." Harris exhaled, then gestured toward the map. "Look at this," he said. "This is the last known location of one of the safe houses in Paraguay they used to own, burned down 5 years ago. Local cops reported it as accidental. But now," he pulled up an image on screen. It was the same house from the child's drawing. Same strange sloping roof. Same arch. Even the snake. Jamie squinted, so she drew a location. Jamie's eyes narrowed. "We need to find the woman in that drawing, the one she sees as her mother." Harris nodded slowly. "If she's alive, she may be the key." They brought in a forensic child psychologist to try and extract more information gently. Meanwhile, facial recognition ran a scan using the woman's likeness from the drawing, enhanced by AI reconstruction. 2 hours later, a partial match hit, a woman named Lina Duartes, former linguist for a South American humanitarian agency. Missing for 4 years, assumed dead. Last seen traveling across the Honduras-Guatemala border with her daughter. No further documentation. Jamie felt the air leave her lungs. "She's the mother," the agent confirmed. Interpol marked her MIA. Some intel suggested she may have defected or was eliminated after uncovering a trafficking route. But nothing confirmed. Until now. Jamie sat in silence, staring at the woman's photo. Long black hair, sharp cheekbones, alec eyes like her daughter's. If she had survived, it meant she'd been part of this underground world for years. Jamie felt the pieces shift. If Lina had embedded herself or been kept alive, then maybe, just maybe, she'd left clues. Jamie returned to the medical suite, holding up the enhanced image for the little girl. "Is this your mommy?" she asked gently. The child blinked at it, then clutched her stuffed bear tighter, but nodded. There it was, a thread. Later that night, one of the customs intelligence analysts burst into the command room, clutching a document. "You're not going to believe this," he said breathlessly. 2 hours ago, someone tried to access Lina Duarte's diplomatic file from a terminal in Berlin. Unauthorized. Scrubbed immediately, but the IP address bounced through a VPN out of Sofia, Bulgaria. Harris's eyes darkened. "They're watching, or tracing. They know we've recovered her daughter." Jamie felt the temperature shift. This wasn't just about saving children anymore. This was about retaliation. About leverage. If Lina was alive, then her daughter was bait, and whoever was behind the new face of the Black Coil knew it. Jamie walked back into the corridor where Rex sat patiently, his gaze fixed on the locked medical bay where the girl now slept under sedation. She kneeled beside him, whispered almost to herself, "We're not just looking for a trafficker's mark now. We're looking for a mother who vanished inside the belly of a monster, and may still be fighting her way out. Rex lifted his head slowly, ears twitching toward the far end of the hallway. Footsteps approached, but it wasn't a uniform. It was a man in a gray suit, expensive shoes, a diplomatic badge clipped to his pocket. He stopped 5 feet from Jamie. "Agent Lauren," he said in a low voice. "I believe we need to speak in private." Jamie stood slowly, her hand unconsciously brushing the grip of her holstered weapon. "And you are?" He smiled faintly. "Someone who's worked with Lena Duarte before, and someone who knows where she might be now." Jamie stood face to face with the man in the gray suit, eyes locked, instincts flaring, one hand hovering near her holster, while Rex stood slightly behind her, poised but still, ears back, nose twitching in the direction of the stranger like he was chasing a memory buried somewhere far beyond the room's sterile fluorescent lights. The man raised his palms slowly, not in surrender but like someone revealing only a fraction of what he carried. "Your name is Colonel David Rains," he said, "former U.S. Army Special Operations. I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here because you found something I never thought I'd see again. That dog." He nodded toward Rex. "And that child." Jamie didn't relax, but her voice came calmer now, calculating. "Start talking." Rains took a breath, eyes drifting to Rex as if pulled back through time. "The dog isn't just airport security. His name is Rex 61 Bravo. He served in Operation Trident Sandstorm, one of the most classified hostage extraction missions in U.S. military history. His record was wiped for civilian release after the war. But I remember him because in 2019 he saved the lives of 14 women and children held in an ISIS-identified bunker outside Al-Madin. One of those women was Lena Duarte." Jamie froze. "The same Lena?" "The mother of that girl," Rains said, pointing toward the medbay door. "She wasn't listed under her real name in the reports. She went by Camila de Santos then, part of an aid mission gone wrong. The militia took her, held her for 6 weeks. We got them out with a K-9 unit. Rex was the first through the tunnel. I saw with my own eyes how he moved, silent, focused, without hesitation. He bit through a guard's arm before the man could detonate his vest. Saved everyone. When we got to Lena, she was crouched over a baby, her arm bleeding, but she wouldn't let go of the dog's neck. She just kept whispering, 'Don't leave me.' She called him Angel de Guerra." Jamie slowly turned to Rex, stunned. The dog hadn't moved, but there was something in his eyes, a kind of distant flame that made it clear he remembered. Not in language, not in narrative, but in sense, in pulse, in vibration. "How did he end up here?" Jamie asked. Rains looked down. "After that mission, Rex was wounded in a secondary op. Shrapnel in his hind leg. He was deemed too unstable for further combat use. The Pentagon passed him into civilian K-9 rotation. His file was erased. Too many secrets." Jamie nodded slowly. "Until he smelled something." Rains tilted his head. "You mean the child?" Jamie crouched beside Rex, placed a hand on his chest. "That girl was buried under a floorboard, no light, no sound, no sightlines, but Rex broke protocol. Ran like he'd found a ghost. He never barks, never lunges. But this time he did. For her." Rains stepped forward, his voice low. "Then he didn't just find a girl, he recognized her." Jamie blinked. "He's never met her before," Rains said. "But he's met the mother, and scent memory in dogs, especially military working dogs, is stronger than we understand. When he smelled that child, he smelled traces of Lena, the same woman who clung to him under enemy fire, the same blood, the same fear, the same warmth." Jamie stood again, her breath shallow. "So you're telling me Rex connected the girl to a woman he saved 6 years ago, and that's why he ran?" Rains nodded. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Jamie leaned against the wall, mind racing. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a reunion. Rains crossed his arms. He never forgot her. Silence hung between them like fog. For a long moment, no one moved. Rex stepped forward now, his tail still, body tense but calm, and pressed his head against Jamie's thigh as if grounding her. The connection was real, deep, ancient in instinct. The Jamie asked, "Do you know where Lena is now?" Rains hesitated. "No, I haven't seen her since Syria. She disappeared after the extraction. I tried to track her through State Department channels, but her identity was scrubbed. I thought she was dead, until you showed me that drawing. Jamie handed him the child's picture. His eyes welled up. That's the snake. I remember it. The symbol was spray-painted on the concrete wall outside that compound. We found files inside, ledgers, locations, names. We thought we'd dismantled the entire network, but I was wrong. That symbol wasn't just for fear. It was their brand. Jamie stepped closer. You still have access to the old op files. Some, Rains said, redacted, but I kept notes. I knew this wasn't over. Together, they returned to the conference room. Jamie pulled up the folder from the decrypted USB. She tapped into the hidden log entries, one labeled Client 8Z Black. She opened it. Inside were transport manifests, not cargo, people, each with codename, weight, height, some marked delivered, some marked rejected. One caught her eye. Unit is, status hold for trade, ETA Geneva. Her heart sank. That's Lena, she said. They're moving her now. Rains squinted. ETA tomorrow. Jamie turned to Harris. We need Interpol Geneva. Airport tracking, everything. If she's still alive, she's about to disappear again. Just then, Rex let out a low growl, not aggressive but focused. His head turned toward the glass wall. Something had shifted, something outside the room. Jamie looked where he did. A maintenance worker passed by, pushing a cart. Nothing unusual, until Rex barked once. Jamie rushed to the hallway, flanked by Harris and Rains. Excuse me, sir, she called. The man turned, startled, but it was his eyes that gave him away. Cold, calculated, too alert for a janitor. Then he ran. Jamie took off after him. Rex, heel then go, she barked, releasing the leash. The dog surged forward like a bullet. Harris shouted into his radio. We've got a runner, terminal level 1, northwest stairwell. The man burst through a door, fleeing into the service tunnels. Rex was right behind him, feet silent against concrete, the same gait he'd used to storm bunkers in Al Mamadin. Jamie followed, heart pounding, lungs searing, until the echo of Rex's snarl bounced off the metal walls ahead. The stairwell echoed with every step as Jamie charged downward, heart pounding in sync with the thudding of her boots against steel, the air growing colder as she descended deeper into the underbelly of the terminal. Ahead, the fleeing suspect twisted around a corner, nearly losing balance as Rex closed the distance, silent and relentless. In that moment, he was no longer a retired canine officer but a soldier once again, his instincts honed by years of combat and layered with something even deeper now, recognition, rage, memory. The man made it through the lower maintenance corridor, shoving a utility cart to block the path, but Rex leapt clean over it, jaws bared, breath controlled. Jamie rounded the corner seconds later, catching a blur as Rex lunged. The suspect collapsed under the dog's weight, a grunt of pain escaping his throat as Rex pinned him by the arm, refusing to release until Jamie arrived. Stay down, she shouted, gun drawn, her knee pressed to the man's back as she cuffed him. Name, now. The man said nothing, but his badge, a laminated pass, slid out from under his jacket during the scuffle. Jamie picked it up. It read, Derek Holland, Logistics Supervisor, North Star Airlines. Her pulse skipped. He's not maintenance, she muttered. Back in the operations room, Harris and Rains combed through airport records. When Jamie returned with the cuffed suspect and the ID, Harris frowned. We've seen that name before. Rains pulled up a list of internal flights. Here, he pointed, Flight 488 to Madrid. 2 days ago. Special cargo noted. Customs flagged it as medical supplies. Same check-in supervisor, Derek Holland. Jamie's eyes narrowed. And what was the cargo? Rains tapped again. Uninspected, special clearance. Same clearance used for today's flight. Harris leaned forward. Wait, are you saying this is not the first time? Rains didn't look up. You? It's the third time this week. Silence gripped the room. Jamie's voice turned cold. So we're not looking at a freak incident. This is part of a schedule. Rains nodded slowly. Exactly. They pulled manifests from earlier flights. Flight 488 to Madrid. Flight 312 to Sofia. Now Flight 772 to Munich. All three processed by the same routing codes. All three had last-minute cargo loaded under diaplanic priority. bypassing full inspection protocols. The tags didn't match any legitimate embassy records. The names on them were fake, but the timestamps, the handlers, the passcodes, identical. Jamie sat down, stunned. They've turned the airline into a trafficking network. And they're hiding children in fabricated floor panels, moving them across borders like dry freight. Harris whispered, "They're ghosts on paper." Jamie glanced at the unconscious man in the chair across the room. Except ghosts don't panic when they see a dog. When Holland regained consciousness under bright lights, he refused to speak until Rex walked in, calm but commanding. The suspect flinched, his eyes locked on the German Shepherd, and something shifted in his demeanor. He wasn't afraid of people, but he feared that dog. "Get him out of here," he muttered. Jamie didn't. "Tell us who gave you clearance," she said. Holland clenched his jaw. "You think I'm stupid? If I talk, I'm dead before the sun sets." Jamie knelt beside him, calm. "You're already dead in here, Derek. At least give those kids a chance." He looked away. "You don't get it. This goes higher than your pay grade." Jamie pressed. "How high?" Holland's lips twitched. "Do you know the name Mason Riker?" The name hit Harris like a bullet. He looked up sharply. "That can't be." Rains looked between them. "Who is he?" Jamie asked. Harris leaned forward, voice tight. Mason Riker was a decorated counterterrorism officer with Homeland. Served 15 years. Disappeared 5 years ago after a failed raid in Bucharest. Rumors were he sold out his team. Jamie blinked. "He works for the airline?" Harris nodded grimly. "Vice President of International Cargo Operations at North Star. He took the role 4 years ago, right after vanishing from federal radar." Rains exhaled. "That means he didn't disappear. He transformed. He built a front from the inside." Jamie's thoughts whirled. "And now he's using cargo routes to rebuild the Black Coil." Holland laughed bitterly. "You don't get it. Riker didn't rebuild it. He was always part of it. You think this whole trafficking network is some rogue cartel? No. It was designed, engineered. He turned Black Ops logistics into a human smuggling ring. Contracts, flight plans, diplomatic shields. You can't touch him, he's wrapped in immunity." Jamie felt heat rising behind her eyes. "But children are dying," Holland shrugged. "Collateral. And you know what? Some of your own agencies benefit. Cheap labor, ghost identities, disposable assets." Harris slammed a fist onto the table. "You've said enough." But Jamie's gaze didn't leave Holland. "How do we stop him?" Holland looked at her, pity in his eyes. "You don't. But maybe your dog can." Jamie narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" Holland smiled faintly. "Riker's afraid of one thing. The past, especially that damn dog. Because 5 years ago in a village in northern Iraq, your mud almost killed him." Jamie stiffened. "That op was in the reports." "Of course not," Holland said. "Riker was there, off book, negotiating a trade with insurgents. Guns for kids. Rex got in his way, tore through 3 guards, nearly got Riker's throat before the evac came. That scar on Riker's neck? That's your dog's work." Jamie looked down at Rex, who stood motionless, as if absorbing every word. Harris whispered, "He's not just part of this case. He's the key." Jamie nodded. Rex didn't just stumble on this, he chased it for years. Rains stepped closer. "If Riker's running the show, he won't stay still. He'll clean house the second he hears about the Munich breach." Jamie turned to Harris. "We need to intercept his next move." Harris brought up the flight logs. "Riker is scheduled to board a private carrier tomorrow morning, Zurich-bound." Rains added, "That's a dead-drop route. No inspection, no federal oversight." Jamie said, "We need to stop that flight." Harris shook his head. "He's too connected. If we ground that plane without airtight evidence, we'll lose jurisdiction and alert him." Jamie's eyes landed on the USB again. "Then we give him a reason to show his face. We smoke him out. We leak what he fears most, that Rex survived." Rains grinned. "He tried to bury a ghost, now the ghost is coming back." Jamie turned to Rex. "You ready to hunt again?" Rex barked once, low, certain, final. And from the hallway a technician rushed in, tablet in hand. "You need to see this," he said breathlessly. You decrypted another section of the drive. On screen, another manifest loaded. But this one didn't list destinations. It listed names. The names on the decrypted manifest were more than just labels. They were profiles, Pieces of a hidden ledger that linked the movement of children across borders to real people in positions of power. Government consultants, transportation officials, foreign liaisons. It was a spiderweb, and at its center every string seemed to pull toward one man, Mason Riker. But what set Jamie on edge was that not all the names were external. One stood out because it was internal. Captain Eli Ward, the officer assigned to the first response team on the Munich flight's incident. The one who had been present when the false floor compartment was discovered. The one who had objected to delaying the aircraft, urging them not to escalate until chain of command confirmed clearance. Jamie felt her jaw tighten. Ward had been there, directing personnel, speaking calmly into his radio, guiding the chaos just enough to feel composed. And now here he was, listed as Tier C asset handler. Harris rubbed his eyes. I vouched for that man. Renee stared at the name, then at Jamie. You said someone tried to slow the discovery of the compartment? Jamie nodded. Yeah. When Rex first barked at the panel, Ward told everyone to hold back. Said it could be a pressure hazard, even called in an explosives unit to stall. Harris stood slowly. He knew exactly what was under that floor. The tension in the command room rose like a tide. They needed to move without tipping their hand. Ward was still on base, overseeing post-operation debriefs. Jamie volunteered to confront him surside. His steps lighter but alert, body wired like an arrow ready to be loosed. The hallway leading to the secure debriefing office was quiet, dimly lit, with overhead LEDs flickering slightly. Jamie pushed open the door. Ward stood near the whiteboard, drawing out a timeline of airport security flaws for the internal report. He turned, smiling faintly. Agent Lorne, thought you'd gone home. Jamie didn't return the smile. Didn't feel right. Leaving loose ends. Ward raised a brow, subtly closing the laptop on the desk beside him. You're here about the Munich flight. Jamie's tone stayed measured. We decrypted more of the manifest. Your name came up. Ward didn't flinch. My name shows up in a lot of places. That's the nature of logistics. Jamie stepped forward. Funny thing is, so does your voice. We pulled the tower tapes. You told the ground crew to delay opening Cargo Bay 4, then called for an unnecessary secondary sweep that kept us out for 11 minutes. Ward shrugged, tone casual. Protocol. There was a canine alert. Could have been an explosive. You know the drill. Jamie narrowed her eyes. You delayed it on purpose. That's when Rex growled. Not a sharp warning, not a bark, but a deep, guttural growl from the back of his throat. Low and drawn out, eyes locked on Ward, stance rigid. Ward glanced down at Rex, his jaw tightening, and for the first time, a crack appeared in his expression. Control your dog. Jamie didn't move. He hasn't done that in 5 years. Not even with a weapon pointed at me. Rex took one step forward. His growl deepened. Jamie lowered her voice. He remembers you too. Doesn't he? Ward's mask slipped just slightly. You think a dog's instincts are enough to accuse a decorated officer? Jamie didn't blink. He's never been wrong. Behind them, Harris entered the room, flanked by 2 security personnel. Ward shifted his weight, eyes darting for the side exit. You don't want to do this, he said quietly. If you arrest me, you unravel something much bigger than Riker. You think he built this alone? He's protected, globally. I'm just a relay. One switch in a network of silence. Jamie stepped closer. How long? Ward looked past her. Since Fallujah. Since the first time I saw Black Mat's trade pass under humanitarian cargo. It wasn't greed, it was inevitability. The machine was too big to fight. Harris gave the signal. The security team moved to restrain him. But before they reached him, Ward spoke again. Fast and pointed. You want Lena? You want to stop Riker? Then you'll need someone who understands the routes, the codes, the dead airports no one audits. I know them, because I designed them. You don't have time to learn what I already know. Jamie hesitated. You're offering to flip? Ward met her gaze defiant. I'm offering to trade. Harris stepped in. You'll be held, interrogated. But you give us Riker, you might live long enough to testify. Ward raised his hands slowly as the cuffs clicked shut. Then start asking the right questions. Rex didn't stop growling until the door closed behind him. Jamie stared at the empty whiteboard, heart racing. Ward's betrayal cut deep, not because it was personal, but because it was strategic. He had inserted himself into the investigation with just enough precision to monitor their progress, steer their eyes elsewhere, and delay what couldn't be stopped forever. But he hadn't accounted for one variable, one anomaly in his equation. Rex. Back in the main room, the technician who had been decrypting the final USB sections rushed in with a hard drive in hand. We found something encrypted inside an image file. A schedule, not for flights, for children. Pickup points, drop zones, coordinators. Jamie scanned it. Her hands trembled. This one's labeled Operation Black Eve. Rains looked over her shoulder. That's not just smuggling, that's mass transfer. Harris pointed to the coordinates. This location's active tonight. Jamie locked eyes with him. Then we're going in. But Rex had already moved toward the map board where a pin-marked Stallion airfield glowed under red light. The same one Riker had used for silent extraction flights. He stood beside it, still as stone, nose inches from the mark, tail low, ready. The air in the secure pediatric observation room was still, thick with the quiet tension of sleepless hours. Outside, the operational tempo surged. Jamie, Rains, and Harris prepared an intervention based on Ward's decrypted route map and the incoming coordinates from the child trafficking ledger. But inside this room, a different kind of breakthrough was unfolding. The little girl, the younger one who had not spoken since she'd been pulled from the hollowed compartment, lay curled under a medical blanket, a small clip-on reading light illuminating her face in the dark. Jamie had insisted on placing Rex nearby, believing instinctively that his presence offered the child more safety than any adult's hand. For hours, the girl had stared at the soft light dancing on the wall, occasionally glancing toward the dog, who sat still as stone, head resting between his paws, tail unmoving. Jamie had almost given in to sleep herself when she heard it, a whisper almost imperceptible, like the rustle of cloth. At first she thought it had come from outside, but then she realized it had come from the bed. She turned her head slowly, eyes wide open, ears straining. The girl's lips were moving. She was talking. Jamie sat up, motioned for the night nurse to stay quiet, and inched closer. The girl's eyes remained unfocused, gazing at the ceiling, but her words came in broken, whispered Spanish. Lena. Jamie's breath caught. What did you say, sweetheart? The girl blinked once, then closed her eyes and repeated it. Mi mama. Lena. Her voice cracked. El zala ualan al cuarto con las luces los que hulan a medicina. Jamie knelt down. The girl's voice was a thin thread. Los hombres con batas blancas, había tres. Siempre hulele. Cloro. Y rudo de. Maquinas. The nurse leaned in. She's saying 3 men in white coats took her mother. In a room that smelled like bleach. There were machines. Medical. Jamie whispered. A lab? The girl slowly sat up, face pale but eyes clearer now, as if some part of her had decided to rise from hiding. She reached for the crayons Jamie had left earlier. With slow, deliberate lines she began to draw, not a house, not a dog, but a shape. A circle, inside it a symbol that looked almost like a droplet with wings, surrounded by tiny geometric curves. She colored it in blue and green. Jamie watched as the child carefully added lines underneath it, or letters, or at least what looked like a stylized name. Viralia. Jamie stared at the drawing. Something about that symbol crawled under her skin. She took a photo, sent it to Harris and Rains, and within minutes the encrypted search database returned a hit. Not for a company, not for a school or hospital, but for an organization classified under NGO review. The Viralia Foundation registered as a child health outreach nonprofit based in Zurich. Its tagline read, "Healing the Future." But beneath that, Red Dag's metadata revealed that Viralia had been listed in 2 separate EU investigations, both sealed, and had received funding from shell companies with known black coil ties. Jamie's hands clenched. They're using humanitarian fronts. Rains barged into the room moments later, breath short, tablet in hand. The logo matches, he confirmed. We cross-checked it with the seal used on Viralia's Geneva-based mobile labs. They've been running pediatric vaccine campaigns through conflict zones, Syria, Sudan, parts of Colombia. And in every region, local records show children disappearing days after the clinics arrived. Jamie turned to the girl. Sweetheart, did one of the men have this on his arm? She pointed to the drawing. The girl nodded slowly, then lifted her own sleeve and traced her finger over her forearm. Aquí, tenía esto, con tinta negra. The symbol had been tattooed. Permanent. Owned. Marked. Jamie exhaled hard. She saw them, up close. Rains nodded grimly. And that means she wasn't just cargo, she was The room fell silent. The girl shivered, and Rex moved closer, laying his head gently on her feet. She reached down, brushing his fur with small fingers. Then, her voice barely audible, she added, "Ellos dijeron, Mama tiene que firmar para que yo viva." Jamie's heart cracked. They forced her mother to consent, or at least to appear as if she did. In the other room, Harris was coordinating with Interpol. Varelia has diplomatic immunity in several countries due to its NGO status, he barked. If we move in with guns, they'll pull the humanitarian card. Jamie replied, Then we don't move in with guns. We move in with evidence. And we use the only witness they never expected to survive. She nodded toward the girl. He knows where her mother is. Not by address, not by name, but by scent. By memory, by fear. And if we follow her truth, we'll find Lena. Harris frowned. Are you sure she can remember enough? Jamie looked down at Rex. She doesn't need to. He does. That night, with the child resting in the same room as Rex, Jamie sat beside them both, eyes scanning every detail of the Viralia report. She circled one note in the footer of a customs form, a code linked to medical cargo dispatched from a Zurich warehouse. The code matched one from Riker's last recorded shipment, and the destination wasn't a hospital. It was a ship. The war room buzzed with frantic energy as the new data streamed in. Satellite relays, airport manifests, encrypted messages cross-referenced with Viralia's NGO flight paths. A private charter jet had just requested priority clearance for departure from a low-profile runway at Riesenfeld airstrip, a remote landing facility 40 miles northeast of Munich. Its listed purpose, medical outreach transport, but the cargo manifest carried red flags. No detailed weight logs, no passenger list, and one particular code embedded in the metadata, a string identical to the one found in Riker's child transfer logs. Jamie's pulse surged. That's them. They're moving the next group now. Rains leaned in. Estimated takeoff in 40 minutes. Flight crews already aboard. If we missed that plane, they vanished into non-extradition airspace. Harris barked orders. Mobilize field units. Get a chopper. Quiet. Fast. Jamie turned to Rex, already at her side, posture alert, nostrils flaring. He was ready. Again. But this time, Jamie's voice dropped low. It might be the last run, boy. Rex did. They loaded into a tactical response chopper outfitted for low-attitude flight. Inside, Jamie reviewed the satellite feed. A fleet van had arrived at the private hangar 10 minutes earlier. Thermal scans showed multiple heat signatures, at least one small child scythe. The van had diplomatic plates and was flanked by two unmarked SUVs. She zoomed in. The driver of the SUV matched an ID pulled from Virelia's Zurich staff. Dr. Emmerich Kroll, a disgraced geneticist who had been reported dead 6 years earlier. They're resurrecting ghosts, Jamie muttered. Rains replied, and we're about to bury them. The chopper landed in the pine-shrouded outskirts of the airstrip. Time was thin. They had 17 minutes before tower clearance would release the aircraft for takeoff. Jamie and Rains moved in from the east hangar gate. Harris flanked north with 2 units. Rex trotted ahead of Jamie, his ears swiveling like radar. The air was thick with fuel, pine, and something else. Fear. He picked up speed, then he stopped. Snarled. Jamie looked where he was pointing. A dark-haired girl was being led from the back of the van by 2 men in lab coats. She was barefoot, silent, her arms limp. Jamie's voice cut sharp over comms. We have a live extraction, child target in motion. Intercept in 60 seconds. But before they could close in, an explosion rocked the far side of the hangar. Smoke poured into the sky. The plane started to move. Someone had triggered a diversion. Rex shot forward like a bullet. Jamie calling out, "No! Wait for my mark." But he didn't wait. He had locked on. Ahead, a figure broke from the smoke. An inside man. Someone wearing airport security gear. Jamie recognized him. One of Ward's former ground team. "That's the mole," she shouted. The man bolted toward the van, yelling to the driver. The vehicle lurched forward, tires screaming on gravel. And before Jamie could react, Rex veered hard left, cutting across the tarmac and throwing his full weight into the passenger side door. The impact sent him tumbling beneath the wheel arch. The van swerved, nearly overturned. The child inside screamed. The driver accelerated again. Jamie's heart stopped. She sprinted, firing 2 shots into the rear tires. One hit, the van jerked sideways and crashed into a fuel cart. Sparks flew. Jamie reached the vehicle, yanked the door open. Rex was lying beside the front wheel, chest heaving, blood spreading fast from a deep gash along his side. The girl inside was sobbing, eyes wide, chained to the seat by medical restraints. Jamie cut her loose, handed her off to an officer, then dropped to a "Stay with me," she whispered, cradling his head. His eyes flickered. He tried to stand, failed, tried again. Rains called out, "Plane's moving, we've got 4 minutes to stop the runway." Jamie looked up, then back down. "Rex," she said, voice breaking, "I need you to stay just this once." But Rex pushed against her arms. He rose, staggered, blood matting his fur. Then he barked, a sharp, defiant bark that echoed against the metal walls, like a vow. Jamie exhaled. "All right, one more time." She pressed her comms. "All teams, push toward the loading ramp. Do not let that plane lift." They charged. Rex limped beside her, slowing but still following, tracking the scent trail like it was tethered to his soul. As they neared the runway, the side hatch of the aircraft opened. 2 masked men emerged, rifles drawn. A firefight erupted. Rains took one down, Jamie dropped the second. The pilot panicked and attempted to lift, but a fuel line had been punctured in the earlier blast. Flames licked the rear wheel, the jet's engines whined, then choked. Still, it rolled forward. Then, from the rear cargo hold, another man appeared, dragging a child. This one unconscious, older, blonde, pale. "He's got another one," Jamie shouted. The man saw her, raised his weapon, but Rex was already moving. Through smoke, through pain, through instinct, he lunged, his entire weight thrown into the man's side. They both collapsed onto the tarmac, the gun clattering away. The child fell free. Jamie dove, pulled the girl back. Behind her, he looked at his low yelp. Jamie pressed gauze into the wound along Rex's side as sirens blared in the background, and the sound of the final rotors beating against the night sky faded into silence. The airfield was secure, the traffickers either dead or in custody, and the children, 5 in total, all drugged, all alive, were being stabilized by emergency responders. But nothing else registered except the weak pulse beneath her hands and the labored rise and fall of Rex's chest. His eyes were still open, alert, but the sparkle had dulled, the fire dimmed. Jamie whispered to him, not as an officer, not even as a handler, but as something closer to kin. "You brought her back. You did it." Her voice cracked. "Stay, okay? Just stay." Back at Munich Medical Command, Rex was rushed into surgery under the supervision of a military veterinary trauma team flown in from Ramstein. Jamie remained outside the glass, pacing like a caged animal. The girl, Lena's daughter, sat in the corner of the waiting room, her knees pulled to her chest, her stuffed bear in her lap, her eyes never leaving the double doors. For hours, no one spoke. Then Harris entered, a folder in his hand and a look on his face Jamie had only seen once before, on the day they lost a whole convoy in Kandahar. "We got her," he said. Jamie turned. "Who?" "Lena," Harris said. "Interpol raided a black site labor camp in central Bulgaria 2 hours ago. She was there, alive." Jamie nearly dropped to her knees. "How?" Rains stepped in beside him. "She was being held under a false identity. Listed as deceased in 2020. Forced to work under sedation in a textile operation run through a shell company owned by Virelia's Eastern Bloc branch. The girl's drawing, the symbol, helped verify her identity. It triggered a match in UN Field Medical Archives," Jamie whispered. "She survived all these years, and she never stopped trying to find her daughter," Rains added. He left clues in every place she was moved. A name carved in a wall. A flower drawn on a lunch tray. She knew someone would connect them. Jamie closed her eyes. And Rex did. Lena was flown to Munich under protection within 12 hours. The reunion wasn't grand. There was no applause, no staged photograph. Only two people, one broken, one healing, standing in a silent hospital room as morning light filtered through the blinds. The girl stood behind Jamie as the door opened, watching a thin, pale woman with unkempt hair and bandaged wrists step forward, trembling. "Mia Moore," Lena said. Her voice, the child dropped the bear, ran. No hesitation, just arms around arms, forehead against forehead, a sob so deep it shook the room. Rex, lying nearby with bandages wrapped around his torso and IVs taped to his legs, watched quietly. He lifted his head slightly as the child turned, crossed the room again, and gently lay beside him on the floor. She wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered something into his fur. Jamie crouched, straining to hear. The girl repeated in broken but clear English, "Rex saved me, just like he saved Mom." It was the first full sentence she'd spoken aloud in either language since her rescue. Jamie's eyes filled. "He did, sweetheart. He always does." In the weeks that followed, Operation Black Eve unraveled across 3 continents. With Ward's confession and Holland's detailed route maps, Interpol coordinated with the EU, UN, and private intelligence firms to dismantle Viralia from within. Raids were executed in Warsaw, Odessa, Tripoli, and Santiago. Hundreds of children were exposed. Air cargo containers seized. Hundreds of children were rescued, many long presumed dead. Some were reunited with family. Others, too broken to return, were granted protected status and psychological care. But the ghosts would never fully vanish, nor would the scars. Reichard, cornered in a Geneva apartment days later, chose cyanide over capture, a coward's exit. Jamie didn't flinch when she heard, "He didn't deserve a trial," she said. Rains agreed. He didn't deserve the air. As for Derek Holland, he accepted full immunity in exchange for testimony that brought down 3 members of a NATO Ballistics Council complicate in covering trafficking corridors under diplomatic operations. Justice, for once, didn't arrive in silence. It thundered through every corridor once darkened by secrecy. 1 month later, under soft spring light, Jamie visited the military veterinary center where Rex was recovering. His gait was slower, his bark hoarse, but his spirit intact. Lena and her daughter had joined her, the little girl now drawing every day, speaking in 2 languages, her words sometimes halting but always growing stronger. That day she handed Jamie a new picture, Rex, drawn with a superhero cape, standing in front of a house without any snakes, just windows full of light, and a garden. "It's where we'll live someday," she said. Jamie crouched beside her, nodding. "And Rex?" The girl looked up, smiling. "He'll sleep on the porch, he likes the sun." Jamie rubbed her back, eyes drifting to the real Rex lying nearby, ears twitching, tail thumping once at the sound of her voice. He was more than a dog, more than a partner. He was proof that memory could live in scent, that loyalty could last beyond war and into peace, that sometimes the bravest hearts walk on 4 legs and speak only with action. In the final report filed to international security councils, Jamie included one sentence that wasn't procedural or professional. It was personal. It read, "This mission was completed not by our hands, but by the nose, the memory, and the will of a single dog who never forgot the woman he once saved, and who, years later, found her child and brought her home." Rex's name was entered into the Hall of Military Honors 2 weeks later. But long before that, he had already earned something greater. He had earned a place in a story that would be told not in headlines, but in a whisper, in a little girl's voice as she wrapped her arms around him, buried her face in his fur, and whispered again, with absolute certainty, "Rex saved me, just like he saved Mom." If this story moved you, consider giving it a like and subscribing to stay with us on the next journey. Because some heroes don't wear capes, they walk on 4 legs. Which part of Rex's story hit you the hardest? Was it when he recognized the girl's scent, or when he threw himself into danger one last time? And where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We'd love to know how far this story has reached.